I'm Stilla Webb.
And I'm Siobhan Ghosh.
I'm going to write my first fiction novel this year.
And I'm going to film it.
And we're going to release one video each week.
And if you keep up with Stilla's word count, by the end of 2017, you'll have... Brought to you by? Brev. Alright, 10%ers. Since Stilla went rogue last week and made a video without me about description, we're going to make a second part to really talk about description.
So last week, I suggested that you go out into the world and get as close to your settings as you can to get descriptions. But you shouldn't take that as advice to overblow your descriptions.
So this week, we're coming to you on location at The Dean in Providence, Rhode Island. Because it's a hotel that's all about understating.
It's minimal, and yet evocative.
Which is what we want you to be. So that's why we call this video, Less is More. When most new writers start writing, they tend to over-describe things, as shown in this example from Jean Johnson. From A Soldier's Duty by Jean Johnson. Ia, I.A., is the main character. She's like a soldier in this new Space Marine army, but she can see the future, and so she knows she has to be a soldier to prevent aliens. But this is her first day in boot camp, getting her gear, and an unexperienced soldier is watching her.
Ia took her place in the alcove. Tapping the green reset button, Ia tucked her arm into the slot long enough for the machine to read her profile, then started grabbing and unwrapping the packets almost as fast as the dispensary spat them out. Plexi wrappers went into the recycler, and boots went into the bottom of her bag, stuffed with quickly balled pairs of socks and spare boot laces. Undergarments were fitted in around both pairs of boots, then shorts, t-shirts, trousers, shirts, and rain gear, each item neatly folded and rolled tight. As soon as she reached the changing room, she'd have to unpack everything to get out the required change of clothes and boots and then repack it all over again. But for now, everything got stuffed into the oversized knapsack.
On top of everything else, she fitted her hat, stuffed with her sunglasses, and her freshly stitched name and platoon patches. A moment later, she had the bag sealed shut, and swung the entire load onto her shoulder as easily as she would have swung a jacket. The next recruit behind them wasn't even done reciting his oath of service. What exciting military action.
That's way too many words.
We don't need to know this much detail.
At this point, there's so much detail that it's hard to figure out exactly what she's doing.
Yeah. The point of this paragraph is to show that she's really competent, that she's planned for this and she knows how to pack, and the other soldiers don't. But what if this paragraph just looked like this?
Ia took her place in the alcove and scanned her wrist. Plexi-wrapped gear came out as fast as she could grab them. Boots, socks, pants, shirts, all went into her bag, neatly folded and wrapped tight. She had her bag packed and stowed before the recruit next to her had even finished reciting his oath of service.
So what did we do? Looking back at the way it was previously, there's 3 sentences... What are you doing?
Nothing.
Okay. Looking back the way it was previously, there's 3 sentences for her to start getting the gear out of the machine.
Yeah.
We made that 2.
Yep.
Okay.
There's one detail we left out, and that's her taking them out of the packages and recycling the plastic. But it's a detail you don't explicitly need.
Yeah. There's 2 huge sentences about describing all the gear. And you don't need to describe...
how exactly she packed it.
Yeah. You don't need to. You can just say military gear, and most everyone has an idea of what's going on.
Right.
And then we took out a whole sentence of she'd have to repack... Did you read this knapsack part? I think
I totally did. I read everything.
We took out a whole sentence which didn't need about... She'd have to unpack everything later, which who cares? Because the whole point of this paragraph is she's super competent, and the other recruits aren't.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you need to do, is figure out exactly what your description means, what you're trying to say with your description, and then distill that down.
Because every description should serve an emotional point.
Every description should say something about the character who's doing the describing.
Yeah. Are they witty? What do they notice? Are they smarter than everyone else? That's the point of a big descriptive paragraph.
Are they not as observant? Are they missing details?
Yeah. That's the point of a big descriptive paragraph, not what gear did the soldier have in her bag, how is this soldier different from other soldiers.
Yeah.
So when you're describing a building, it doesn't matter where the windows are so much, or the flags, or what color the building is. How does the building make the main character feel? Yeah.
Is it daunting? Is it exciting? Are they dreading going into that building because something horrible is about to happen?
Yeah, most people think when you should describe a building, you should describe what color it is or what it's made out of, or you want to paint a visual picture. And as I've written more and more books, I've learned that that stuff almost doesn't matter. What people remember are the emotional pulls from the description. For example, consider this book we bought in the H.P. Lovecraft store here in Providence. It's hand drawings of all these microorganisms underneath a magnifying glass. And the point is, just like Stella was saying, how are you going to describe this complexity? This is just a microscopic little plankton. How are you going to describe it in a way that someone's going to picture it? What you're describing, if I was going to put this in my story, you would describe the intricate little starship-looking things and like how nature and crystalline it was and how intricate it was. But you're not going to describe how many windows or spikes it has. The point is to make the reader feel, wow, nature is so intricate.
The point would be to describe how that intricacy is, or how amazing that intricacy is, and how startling it is to know that nature on such a tiny level is creating something so amazingly detailed, and how that makes the character who's describing it feel about the world. Not so that the reader can actually sit there and draw a replica of it.
Exactly.
Story.
So as I'm editing, in the second pass, my biggest goal is to remove shit.
Yes.
I'm looking through these descriptive paragraphs, and I'm actually taking details out and just putting in emotional content.
So if you take last week's advice and combine it with this week's advice, what you're looking to do is to have a unique description that gives a good emotional punch in a short number of words.
Yeah. So now I also want to talk about the power of small changes. So here's here's something I'm looking for when I'm doing not descriptions, but just general editing. This is from Infinity Squad 3. They're fighting a virus. The main character is trying to get information from one of the apes called Parmalu, but she realizes she won't get any more information until they help get another team member laid. Because that's Parmalu's goal.
Yeah.
So here's 3 ways this paragraph could go. And I saw...
Oh my
damn
God.
it!
Wasn't mine this time. I know you were like about to get mad at me. I'm like,
So here's 3 ways this paragraph could go. And again, we're looking for small changes. And I saw, as plain as a book laid open in the sun, that I wouldn't be getting any more good data out of Parmalu until I helped her get our Disney princess laid. I sighed. 1. And I saw, as plain as a book laid out open in the sun, that I wouldn't be getting any more good data out of Parmalu until I helped her get our Disney princess laid. I sighed and turned my chair fully around. And I saw, as plain as a book laid open in the sun, that I wouldn't be getting any more good data out of Parmalu until I helped her get our Disney princess laid. I sighed, then turned my chair fully around. So looking over those 3 things, it's that last sentence that I'm changing. And just with the difference of adding a couple of words or adding a comma, you change the whole emotional theme. Like in the first one, what is the emotional takeaway?
I think the first one's a little too fast. It doesn't let you sit on that idea for a second. It's just, I sighed.
Well, I mean, it's kind of it ends on a down note. It's like, I sighed.
Yeah.
She's like, the air is taken out of her. She's like, okay.
I sighed. Okay. In the first example, she just kind of went, ugh, why me? But in the next 2, it's obviously she's about to do something. But the third one shows the, okay, collect and go.
Yeah.
Which is the...
And the third one is the one I used in the book. And that collect and go, all that huge wealth of detail, it's just that comma.
It's just the comma, because the comma gives you that pause. It lets you sit in the, why? All right, we got to do this.
Right. The first one ends on a down note. She sighs, she's deflated. The second one, it's too fast. It's like, she's like, I sighed and turned my chair around.
You don't get that emotional moment to sit.
Right. And that emotional moment to sit is just that comma. So when you're editing your book, look for things as small as that. This you might catch on the 4th or 5th or 6th draft.
Yeah.
But that's what I look for when I talk about making sure every word and punctuation is right. That's what I mean.
Every word, every comma, every period, how many things you put in a list, when you cut dialogue, all these little tiny things, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So yes, I call it the power of small changes.
And again, for your first book, you want to save this for the really important scenes. You want to pour over them. You want to get everything up to a good level of snuff and then pour over those really important scenes. Like the first 3 chapters, your midpoint, the climax,
Yeah.
any sex scenes, fight scenes.
Okay. I think
I'm waiting. I'm sorry.
I think we've lost the breath here.
I know. I can cut this out. I can fix this in post.
Okay. Do you want some pro tips?
Pro tips!
Sproing. Pro tip number 1. Never interrupt your flow for a description.
Yes.
What I mean by this is each scene you're trying to get an emotional push through. Once you've got that going, don't stop it and be like, her boots were brown with leather buckles and...
Yeah, never stop the entire momentum of a scene for a couple of sentences of descriptor about anything. If you have to have those details, add it into the flow of the scene. Have them, if it's a dialogue scene, have them, adjust their brown boot while they're talking.
Exactly.
So that it's incorporated into the flow of the scene and doesn't stop the flow. Flow matters.
Yeah, flow is one of the hardest things to get going in a scene and one of the most important. And if it's whatever it is, whether it's a sad flow, whether it's action, whether it's comedy, let it go. I find that 1 sentence of description you can slip in there, 2 sentences in a row is pushing it, and 3 sentences breaks the flow. So just like Stella said, you can have 1 sentence of the character pulls up her brown boots and laces them too tight, cutting off her blood flow. Fine. The brown boots were given to her by her mother in a planet long ago. They made her look taller and, and were appropriate for wear on this planet. No.
Yeah, that's how you set up a scene. That's not what you do in the middle of a scene.
And that is pro tip number 2.
Ooh.
My technique to start a chapter is exposition, wrap up snark. So, for example, if you're fighting a virus, the virus was spreading from the cities to the outer suburbs. We were getting 20, 30 people infected in a day, coughing, sick, coming in by feet, by car, any way they could. We were working around the clock to get them beds and pick up puke, take their temperatures. Needless to say, it was a shitty day. Right? Set up scene, exposition, but it ends with how you should feel about the character. And from there, you let the scene flow.
The other thing this does really well is this shows time progression. So not only is this exposition, but it's also a transition.
Yeah. It's setting up the scene. It's all the things that newer writers would try and put in the middle of a scene or have people say to each other.
Or have it for 5 paragraphs to explain everything about the disease spreading.
People can picture most of the stuff in their head if you give them some broad pointers. But no matter what you describe, it's supposed to serve an emotional point. The virus is not so much matters as how do the characters feel? How do you feel about the characters?
The wrap-up emotional punch. Like, how is this affecting the character? How are they internalizing this situation?
That's really the point of any description is, what does it say about the character doing the describing?
Yep.
So, wrapping up. Just like when you're doing your descriptions, think of the Dean Hotel. How everything in the Dean is minimalist, but powerful. From the coasters, to the stationery, to the pillows, to the bathroom. Everything serves the emotional point in as little as possible, with as little effort as possible.
There's nothing wasted. Everything has a use.
Yeah. So your homework this week is to check that every description of a thing tells you something about the person describing that thing.
Nope, I'm on board.
Brev. Yay. If you have any questions, email us your descriptions at hey@getrain.wang. And until then,
get editing.
Dean. When most new writers start